Good morning, everyone. This is Shame of Emperors 4. We've gone over quite a bit over these last three chapters. Today, I want to flesh out a little bit more on the stages of grief or the stages of death. Um, I think there's a lot of applications now because a lot of us are in a transitional stage in our life, uh, going from the country all the way to our individual uh, journeys. Whether that's professional, whether it's family, whether it's, you know, aging out of a certain demographic or, um, cohort. People have just graduated, a lot of things happening in the workforce, and of course, technological changes as well. So, learning how to transition properly. Another thing that track and field teaches you. Um, that's actually kind of a good way to look at it. We talked about denial, anger, bargaining, sadness or depression, and acceptance. So, when we are in denial about the changing world order, so to speak, as Ray Dalio likes to talk about, um, the inertia of the comfort of the past is what we will focus on. For example, if we lose power in our home. I remember in Dallas in 2021 when I was training at Sanders Fit. There was one week in February where we had a complete loss of power throughout the city. And I still had to go to the gym and build clientele and train and things like that. Very, very stressful. Um, and I didn't have a shovel. It was Texas. I had to use a fireplace shovel to shovel the iced out sidewalk. Um, but, you know, sitting in the emotions of that will make you want to just shut off and say, well, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to stay unproductive. Um, that's, kind of a amateur way of looking at things. Uh, I have a lot of respect for people that served in the military because part of warfare is understanding how to run towards the gunfire. And a mentor of mine taught me about fields of fire, sectors of fire. We all have a specific gift set that allows us, let's just say, imagine a round table, Knights of the Round Table, but instead of facing inward, everybody's facing outward. So they all have a sector that they can cover with their field of vision and their specific skill set. Now, everybody's skill set is different, and everybody's sector may be narrower or wider based on the tools that they have at their disposal. So we're all meant to kind of intersect with each other and work with complementary teammates that can encompass that full 360 degrees. But if we're in denial about the stage of life that we're in, the real socioeconomic status that we have, our place in the general hierarchy, remember, leadership is not just about authority, it's about responsibility. So those are two sides of the same coin. Everybody loves the authority of a leadership position. If you've been white in this country or Jewish in this country, you love the fact that the best neighborhoods and the best suburbs and the best schools have been organized and gerrymandered and redlined for your benefit. You don't want to learn about inconvenient history. You only want to talk about the history of, let's say, the Holocaust, or let's say the Irish potato famine, or let's say the Italian community in the early 1900s, Genco olive oil or whatever. But the fact remains is America was built because of a lot of cultural and racial tension that created a caste system just like India, just like all the colonialist empires, that put certain cultures above others in terms of respect, authority, leadership positions, compensation, all these demographic things. And now that we have more access to resources, we're seeing how many shortcuts were taken while white Jesus was being preached and while 501c3s littered America. Now, if the fruit of that tree was worthwhile, wouldn't we see a better economic situation? Even if all we were thinking about is money, shouldn't we be the most prosperous nation all across the board? We should be. But what do we see? We see every city has a remarkable practice of segregation in its practices, in its real estate, in its whatever. And we're seeing an overall decline in every facet of our government and of our industry, of our production. And look at the education of our young people. If we truly were the best at everything, if all these, great suburban empires were as phenomenal as you say, shouldn't our children be the most literate, the most mathematically solid, the most proficient in all kinds of languages, and the most innovative in technology and industry? Is that what's happening with all the privileges that you've had over this last century and change? I think it's time to get out of the denial of our own hubris. Okay? So it's not just one set of cultures or one family or one individual that's struggling with this. We all have to look in ourselves to see where is the hubris in us that is causing the denial that we're in. Secondly, anger. Anger is, depression turned outward. So a lot of times you will see that, introverts get depressed and they go into prescription medication and all those types of things, mental health. And mental health is a part of overall health, physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. We neglect most of these things. We even neglect physical health with these GLP-1s and vaccines and all these types of things. Shortcuts, chemical shortcuts to try to get aesthetic outcomes only. Okay? Think about the people you had crushes on in your teens and 20s. What was it about them that, made you, kind of swoon and fall in love? It was usually a physical attraction. But if you're intelligent, you think about relationships from the perspective of an 80-year-old. Who's the person you want at your bedside when you are 80, after you've gone through a lifetime of ups and downs? You would want someone that has the most compatibility with you on the deepest level. The deepest level is your spiritual identity. And so that's why it's important to flip the food pyramid upside down from time to time. Because part of the reason for all this anger that, first generation people, older boomers in white America, the Jewish community, now that, minority communities are having their own media platforms and other ways of expressing free speech, American citizens when it comes to Israel's abuse of our budget and all these types of things. This anger that you're feeling, this vitriol, this reactionary emotion that you're feeling is because of your inverted food pyramid. So these were solvable problems, and the people with the most education and the most resources and the most familiarity with all this, mental health vocabulary, DSM-5 and all that stuff, you should have been the ones leading the way. Now, the denial of thinking that, okay, well, I want the authority of leadership. I want to tell everybody what to do in perpetuity throughout the universe. I want all the contracts to have fine print that only benefits me, and I want to deceive everybody for the rest of time. That's not realistic. Okay? And we're starting to see the fruit of that tree. So, denial. Okay? Denial is more than a river in Africa. Anger. Whether it's petty jealousy that makes you send emails to other people behind someone's back to undercut them or to make their life more difficult, or trying to besmirch someone's reputation, saying that they are in some type of mental health crisis, when you in fact are creating the environment to gaslight and trigger them over and over and over again, in a kind of abusive way. Now, there's a lot of people that will call 911 on an intimate partner, neglecting to say that they spent the past months and years, poking at all of their triggers, trying to get a reaction out of them. And then finally, once the reaction comes, then you call the, authorities and do this and that. People do it all the time. But that is indicative of someone who does not need to be in a leadership position. So that's the trade-off. You can be immature and you can lie and cheat and steal to get to where you want to get to. But guess what? That's going on your leadership scorecard. And people get to grade that publicly. And, sometimes you may get away with it for a little bit, but eventually all these things come out. And eventually it's going to come out what my motives were and, what the motives were of the people that opposed me. Why did you really not want me to have any kind of success in any avenue? Because it would rob from and expose your mediocrity and lack of action commensurate with your position of leadership authority. You didn't take the responsibility, someone else did, and that's what happens even in the Bible. Saul decided to withhold a certain portion and then wanted the credit of, offering sacrifices, and that's why Samuel said obedience is better than sacrifice. Don't do jobs that God didn't call you to do. Or whatever job God called you to do it right. And then you won't have to deal with any of these problems. And even if you do go through adversity because of that, guess what? God will sort it out because you didn't do anything that was antithetical to his will or desires. Okay? So denial, anger, bargaining. And this is what happens. When you've woven yourself into a web, now you have to bargain to keep yourself there. You have to tell a lie, and then another lie, and then another lie, and then another lie. And then if somebody just pulls on one itsy bitsy thread, you have a house built on sand. It's useless, both to yourself and to everyone after you. Now, when you're older, you don't have the strength of youth to fall back on. You may have the strength of some finances that you've accrued, but remember what God said about the rich man and his storehouses. You don't know when your number is going to be called. And so the trouble with old age is, you realize eternity is very, very close. And so rather than, being stubborn and fighting until the end, have a moment, a Zacchaeus moment. Remember, Zacchaeus was partying with Jesus and repented. That's the best case scenario you could have. While you're still on this earth, while your mental faculties are still good, and white America, I'm talking to you, okay? You've benefited a lot from the pain and destruction of life, specifically of the Black community. Hispanic community, absolutely, in the day laborer sense. Asian and Indian community in the model minority sense, absolutely. Even what you're doing now with the reputation of the Middle East, you've been calling them terrorists since 2001. Okay? We never call Larry Silverstein a terrorist for taking out insurance 2 months before the towers went down. We're always making rappers the bad guys, but none of them own the record labels. Now, bargaining. Bargaining, trying to deal your way out of something that is guaranteed, a certain outcome. Death is coming for all of us, okay? The death of my youth is here. 38 years old, like I told you in the previous chapter. I can't pretend to be 21 years old. Okay? There's gray in my beard. Maybe there's some Dr. Sebi type of thing that takes mucus out of the blood and, then color can be restored. Great. But if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world for me. All I do is try to stay in the best shape that I can to be functional as a leader for Texas Movement and for the other partnerships that I've established, and be the best servant leader that I can be through the best stewardship that I can have with the resources I have. If you took an honest audit of the resources that I have right now, and some of you know these things, I think I'm outperforming by a country mile what I should be doing at this moment. And I think that's the frustration of a lot of my ops and enemies. Okay? So let's manage our bargaining phase well. And if you want to bargain with the next generation. I'm here to help Gen Z. I'm here to help Gen Alpha and beyond. All of these things can be used as templates for future leaders, future creators to establish new ideas. Maybe this will spark something in you that will give you a great AI prompt that you can use to create a new deliverable or project. That's what I want. That's the whole point of this. And guess what? If I get some views and some revenue, that would be great too. Everybody wins when we just do common sense things that work for everybody. Okay? That's what America is supposed to be about. Depression, sadness, and acceptance. Ideally, we have a sense of contentment. The Bible says godliness with contentment is great gain. So if we have a sense of acceptance, accepting our mortality, accepting that we are not the creators of this world or this universe or this firmament or whatever have you, and we will not know everything, every piece of information. Maybe the information was hidden from us by higher ups in 33-degree, thermometers and whatever. That's not my problem. Okay, God doesn't need me to know everything. God needs me to be spiritually in tune with what He wants out of my life. And then when my gifts manifest and when an opportunity arises, I remember Dr. Tony Evans said, if you are, compelled to help somebody that you see and you have the resources to do it, then you should do it. But all those things should kind of merge together. Like, for example, a lot of times, you know, I will see people that are, in inclement conditions or bad conditions that are panhandling or something like that. Not every panhandler is somebody that I feel compelled to, give to. Number one, because my resources are very finite. And number two, that's not the ministry I feel called to, support. However, look at all the free information I provide on YouTube and social media, and that's designed to cater to a number of audiences. That's where I have a lot of, resources and life experience that I can call from, that I can give to you and give to my demographic in a way that they probably wouldn't have received it otherwise. So that's where I can provide very specific real estate and really very specific value in my field of fire or sector of fire. You remember that? So that's how I accept the death of my youth. And I also look back on it and say, with all the opportunities I had, did I underperform, meet expectations, or overperform? I overperformed in a lot of ways. Okay? And any disappointments that I made were to people that would have never been pleased anyway. The one thing I learned from calculus is limits, right? Once I recognized that the first generation in our community, there is no situation that would gain approval. There is no victory scenario for behavior. There is no good enough behavior that you can do to meet those expectations. The relationship is, by definition, adversarial. And that makes me very sad. Now, my job is, if every one of my cohort is dealing with this exact same emotional problem with their parents and their elders and white America as well, and other races, we need to find a best practices solution that will allow people to transition as gracefully as they choose to, but also fully assert our place in the ongoing landscape. Because once boomers sit under their pomegranate tree, they don't care if everyone else completely dies of starvation or anything else. So it's up to us to generate our own resources and structure so that we can continue to live. We cannot keep being the punching bag of people that don't care about us. And that can be whether it's racial, spiritual, or national, whatever. And so these are things that must be addressed. And so that's why I think it's important for everybody to learn the 5 stages of grief in their own life and apply it to whatever stage of life they're in. And if you're approaching the end of your life, it's very, very important that you do this audit. If you're approaching the end of your youth, Drake, let's transition into a more responsible career in the future. Okay? It is not 2010 anymore. We have a lot more things that we need to be focused on to be more responsible. So, denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. The sadness and depression of death and grief is something that we can minimize. I think about my mother a lot. She died July 19th, 2023 of a heart attack. And I'm very sad that I don't have the opportunity to speak with her regularly. But I take pride in the fact, or I take comfort in the fact, that we spent as much time in family prayer as possible. Even on days where it was slightly inconvenient, we were able to get on Zoom. That was one of the hidden silver linings of COVID. We got familiar with Microsoft Teams and Zoom. And even though there was some kind of, bad attitude sometimes, we spent the time together in prayer and being able to communicate with each other on a nightly basis. It kept me diligent, and I still maintain a desire to stay connected with the people of God in whatever form that I can that doesn't disturb their reputation or their concerns in any kind of way. And so that is what minimized my sadness and depression. We maximized every moment we had together. And are you doing that with the people that you care about? And, you know, once I realized that I was not wanted in a place, I dusted my feet off and moved to the next place. And the next place gave me the challenges that it gave me. But I was not expecting love from this place. So even that grief, I have been mitigating responsibly as best as I can. And I think that you should think about how can you more responsibly uh, manage whatever stage of grief that you're in right now. So let's stop it there. This has been the 5 stages of grief in the Shame of Emperors series. This is Shame of Emperors 4. My name is Alexander Varghese Mathai. I'm the leader of Texas Movement International, and we'll talk again soon. See you next time.